One approach for setting targets is to look at targets based on capacity. So if one wants to generate their targets based on their capacity, they can do that by selecting this option here. And you can see that the prior required steps are to fill in the populations tab, the continuation tab, and the capacity tab. So there are separate tutorials for each of these particular inputs, but we can walk through them quickly. You can see I've set 4 priority populations, 3 from the drop-down list, and 1 custom group. For the continuation rates, I've specified various continuation rates and applied the appropriate ones for the priority populations we specified. And then for capacity, one can either know their monthly capacity and enter it directly into cell C3, or they can watch the capacity tutorial to figure out how to use this broader worksheet to estimate capacity and have it calculated here in cell C4. Once we get to the Targets tab, the first thing we need to do is define the target setting period using the drop-down lists here. So you can see I've set a 3-year target setting period, and there's room for up to 10 years of targets. Next, we go to this section, which is used to calculate the number of potential users for PrEP. This is particularly important if you're using option 1 and setting targets by coverage. It's less important for option 2. However, it can be useful if you want to look at your coverage percentage once you've set your targets. So let's click on this Target Setting Support tab just to be aware of the different inputs you can have here. So we can return to the Targets tab. We will skip putting in this information this time, but you know that it's there. Scrolling down, you can see that the continuation curves that we've entered previously have carried over to this tab. And next we can focus on scale-up trends. Scale-up trends are how we're rolling out our PrEP program. And at least one scale-up trend has to be defined, but one has space for up to 3 different scale-up trends. There are 3 different shapes you can choose from when thinking about your scale-up trend. There's constant. These are for programs that generally have already reached scale up, and so they're at a relatively steady amount of PrEP provision at each month. Alternatively, you can do a linear shape scale up. That's for rapidly increasing programs where you're expecting more PrEP initiations each month than prior. Lastly, we have the S-shaped scale up pattern. This is where the slow start with a escalating scale up and then a leveling off. And you can set the midpoint, which is the steepest part of the S-shaped curve where you're scaling up most rapidly, as well as the speed. And this is a number you can adjust to make bigger or smaller depending on how you intend to roll out your program. So if you make it smaller, it will become flatter. If you increase it, it will become more steep. So one is really intended to just play around until they have a good visual representation of how they envision their scale up to be. Next, one needs to apply the scale up trend for each priority population. I'm going to give the constant for my SDCs and the S-shaped curve for my other priority populations here. Next, we get to select our target setting option. We're choosing option 2, setting targets based on the annual utilized capacity allocated to each priority population. So in doing that, first we need to say how much of our annual capacity do we want to utilize for our targets. You could put 100% here if you want to set your targets based on maximum capacity, or you could temper that a bit. I'm going to put in 85%. And then next we need to allocate that capacity among our priority populations. So given we have 4 priority populations, you can think through how you think they're going to be allocated over the target setting period. So I'm going to put in 40% for STCs, 20 for FSWs MSM, and 20 for truck drivers. And you might want to play around with these percents a bit It's important that this number here in C76 adds up to 100. So based on those calculations then, it will generate your targets here in column E. That is all that is needed for this tab. Please refer to the user guide for more information, and thank you for watching.